morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where things continue to be a little bit slow. However, thankfully, things are really heating up in China. So 2 of our 3 stories today actually take place on the other side of the globe. But the first thing that I want to talk about is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which premieres tonight, its new season. And interestingly, it does not seem that a Captain America Civil War trailer will be airing during the premiere, which is why I'm sure a lot of you probably don't know that it's premiering tonight. The most they've done is air the first, I think the first scene, the first 5 minutes of the first episode online. That's about as far as they've gone to promote the show's debut, and I found it odd that they haven't matched up the Captain America Civil War trailer with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s season premiere. It's something they've done in the past and something many of us expected, especially since it's been a while since they first debuted Captain America Civil War footage at D23, and we were expecting it to follow the same pattern as the Age of Ultron Comic-Con and then final trailer reveal schedule, and that was only a couple of weeks or about a month or so that we had to wait. But what is Disney waiting for? What is Disney Marvel waiting for? If they're not going to use the trailer to promote Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., as so many of us expected, what are they going to use it to promote? And it occurred to me that perhaps they're sitting on this trailer because they don't want it to overshadow Star Wars, which of course is coming out in December. So they're probably going to maybe, I think, do the double whammy of not only holding it until Star Wars, but releasing the trailer for Star Wars: The Force Awakens and having you see it in theaters. Just a little bit of an extra, layer of security for Star Wars: The Force Awakens, which of course everyone is expecting to be a huge record breaker. Disney, I'm sure, is very nervous in whether or not they'll actually deliver the kind of big numbers that people are expecting. I think last I heard people expect a 600 million debut worldwide. That's absolutely enormous, and it would truly be something spectacular to behold. But can Star Wars deliver that? I would not be so sure because, as I've said, while die-hard Star Wars fans are very excited, I think that people who are not die-hard Star Wars fans are neutral, on the whole subject. And I think that's something Disney has not been able to change, largely because they're listening to J.J. Abrams in terms of their ad campaign for the film, and I think they're playing it way too close to the vest. I mean, the film is very close to hitting theaters, and we don't know anything about the story whatsoever, and we haven't seen anyone really speak any lines except for, either in voiceover or that one line from Harrison Ford as Han Solo. But otherwise, this just continues to be a giant question mark. And, I think people have been burned with the prequels, and it's going to be difficult to get some people to, take a leap of faith, especially opening weekend, which is when they're supposed to deliver some of these really big numbers. And so I think that I think it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see a large company that has so many different brands try to juggle them. And I think it's one of the few setbacks of having so many popular brands under one roof. And that Disney, maybe this is the reason we have such a big break between Marvel movies, and that's not to get in the way of Star Wars. Now, of course, we had a similar break last year with Guardians of the Galaxy in August. And then, of course, Avengers: Age of Ultron didn't hit until May, which is close to our Ant-Man July release this year, and then waiting till the next May for Captain America Civil War. But, Guardians of the Galaxy was a much bigger movie. Ant-Man has, certainly, I think, redeemed itself in many ways at the box office, but it's done so quietly. And it's not a movie that people are really talking about. Everyone's gone to see it, thankfully. It's made a significant amount of money at this point, but it's not something that's really part of the pop culture consciousness, whereas a year ago we were still talking about Guardians of the Galaxy. So I think you really are feeling the Marvel drought, and I do wonder if that's been manufactured to some degree for the benefit of Star Wars, because starting in 2016, I guess they're only going to do this once for Star Wars. Kevin Feige's like, I'm only going to do, take a hit for the team once, but they're going to start kicking in their November movies starting in 2016, and they have a 2016, 2017, and 2018 plans for releases. So you're going to be getting 2 to 3 Marvel movies a year, and they're going to really ramp up their schedule after Star Wars The Force Awakens. So I just think it's a really interesting thing. I guess we're waiting for Phase 3 to start, which could be like, I think, maybe the official reason that we have this bit of a pause here. But I do wonder if it isn't lined up the way it is to benefit Star Wars The Force Awakens. So I'm curious, what do you think? Where do you think they're going to debut this trailer, if not tonight? And they would have, I think, teased it for sure, because what's the point of putting it on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. if they're not using it to get you to tune in this evening, right? If it's a surprise trailer, you just wasted it. So what would you use it for? What do you think they're waiting for? And if you believe they are waiting, like I am now, for Star Wars Episode 7, what do you think of having to wait? They debuted that footage in August at D23, having to wait till December to get a look at this thing. I mean, I just think that's absolutely crazy. But I guess it makes sense. That would still give them about four full months to promote the movie before it hits theaters. But, Disney's so crowded and has so many properties, they really do have to juggle them. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day, as I said, the second two are about China, and the first is about a movie that really did an amazing job at the box office over the weekend. Talk about box office records. This is a movie called Lost in Hong Kong, and I have the trailers for all the movies that we're talking about today in China down below in the video description. So I highly recommend you check them out. China is becoming such a big player in the movie industry that I think it's important to see what they're putting out there. Now, interestingly, Lost in Hong Kong, again, it's the Chinese version of The Hangover, basically, but there's just 2 guys instead of 4, basically, because Ken Jeong kind of counts there. But anyway, it's called Lost in Hong Kong, and it actually did pretty well in the United States as well, where it opened at number 17, and it made $500,000 in just 28 screens. That's pretty solid. But in China, this thing opened with $106 million, and it made it the #1 movie on the globe over the weekend, beating out Hotel Transylvania 2, which I think only came in around $70 million worldwide. So it made $106 million in China alone, which is the 3rd biggest opening of all time in China, behind Furious 7 and then Avengers Age of Ultron. So this is actually the 3rd film in a franchise. Again, as I said, it's their version of The Hangover, and it's become extremely popular, obviously, in China. And so I think that's really, really interesting that they're developing their own franchises, and those franchises are even starting to show up here. Also, they pointed out in their coverage of this movie that they're building so many movie theaters in China, and they have such a huge population that's why records continue to be broken there. You're going to be hearing a lot of a new record in China, a new record in China. And that's because they have more and more movie theaters, and therefore more and more people are able to go. That's just how many people are in China. There are only a few cities in the United States that have about 8 million people. I think really only New York City, actually. There are, of course, other big cities that come close, but there are tons of cities in China that have around 8 million people or more. So with all those people going to the movies, it's easy for them to really get a lot of money for films and get a lot of box office and, get more and more content, tailored to them, not only from the United States, but we're going to be seeing more and more content come out of China, and they're very aggressively trying to move on to the world stage, which is going to lead us into our next story. So not only is China going to be in your movie headlines, but it's going to start to come into your multiplex. And so this is what's going on in the animation section. Monster Hunt has been a huge success in China. It's a CGI live-action hybrid. It's a little bizarre. When you watch that trailer, yes, that is a man being impregnated somehow, and he gives birth to a monster. And I'm glad they have such loose gender roles in China that this was able to be such a big hit. While I embraced everyone's right to be themselves, this still was a little bit weird to me to watch. The guy being pregnant and breastfeeding a monster. I was just like, this is really weird. But anyway, they loved it in China. This thing made $384 million in China alone, and it's so successful that it's going to be distributed here in the United States in early 2016. Not by a major distributor, by a very small distribution company that's going to try and see if they can make some money off of this thing, because they certainly made a lot of money off of it in China. But there's another movie that actually BTT viewer Tomas Elias tweeted me about yesterday called Little Door Gods. It's an animated movie from Light Chaser Animation in China, and they're being very aggressive with this. It's hitting theaters in China in January 2016, but this company wants it to qualify for this year's Oscars in the Best Animated Feature category. Now, that's not to say it will be nominated, but they want it to be eligible to be nominated. And I think this movie actually looks pretty good. I was surprised to see some knee-jerk reactions of people being negative about it in some of the comment sections, which I thought was surprising. I think there's like some surprising, real anger and meanness in the animation fandom. I don't understand why. It's a little bit like how people attacked Legends of Oz: Dorothy's Return, which I thought was a pretty solid movie. I mean, it wasn't like one of the greatest animated movies ever made, but it was more than watchable. I enjoyed watching it. I thought it was solid entertainment. Certainly something people would enjoy in the comfort of their own home for about $3 or $4, or free if it's on Netflix. But anyway, people really tore that movie apart, and it makes me feel a little sad if people might be, already against this movie, this animated movie from China, which looks like it's really trying hard to do a great job. And I think the movie looks very good. I'm really impressed with the animation. I'm impressed with the storytelling, and I'm impressed that while it looks like something that could play on in the world stage, it still seems very loyal to promoting Chinese culture, which I think is fantastic. So I'm really impressed with this, and I would hope that I would hope to see foreign animation, make a little bit of a dent in our Oscar category, something to shake up the animation Best Animated Feature category, because as we all know, that thing's a mess. And people are just voting based on, it's like a popularity contest. People aren't actually voting on the merit of the films that are nominated, which is really, really sad. But anyway, I think that it's very interesting to see China come into focus as not only a filmmaking. They've made movies for a very long time in China, obviously, but something that's going to perhaps compete for the global box office. Really, Hollywood's dominated for so long, and it looks like we might finally have some serious competition coming out of China. And I think that's great. I would love our multiplexes to look like the multiplexes of every other movie theater in the world, and that's where it has a number of films from all over the globe. I think that's just I think it's a better way to be, and I think it's a more well-rounded way to be. So I think these movies look really good. The only one that I was a little off with was Monster Hunt, but everything else looks fun. All right, so on to the viewer question, which actually plays in to our discussion about China. So this comes from a frequent BTT viewer and commenter, Stryden, and Stryden says, Grace, question. Since Attack on Titan is opening this Wednesday, that's the live-action adaptation of the popular manga and anime, so Stryden says, I'm not sure you'll be watching it due to award season, but my question is, how do studios or somebody acquire movie rights? Because, obviously Attack on Titan is being distributed, by not a Chinese distributor. Although, we'll discuss this in just a moment. Let me finish the question. Recently, Lionsgate bought the movie rights to anime manga Naruto. If Attack on Titan manages to make the top 10 at the box office, could a studio make the same play? Thanks for taking, maybe it opens on Wednesday overseas. I'm not sure about that. I'm a little bit rusty on when Attack on the Titan is hitting theaters. But anyway, Stryden's question is, thanks for taking the time on your hard work. It's always an inspiration. And 100 smiley faces for every Titan that falls. Oh boy! All right, so I think that's excellent. And also, Stryden says, please check out the Attack on Titan series on Netflix. I haven't gotten to do it. I meant to do it, but just my schedule got away from me. But anyway, Stryden's question basically is, what is the benefit of an outside studio releasing a foreign film in the United States? Well, and also, what would they get out of it? Well, you get a cut of the box office, and of course, part of the box office has to go to the original distributor in the country from where the movie comes from, and then they have to share those profits with the producer. So you're really talking like a divided up pot here. But I think that, a good chunk will go to the distributor in the country that we were talking about, the United States, in the example, because they have to cover all the advertising and the distribution and handle the press, right? So, for instance, GK Kids takes a lot of foreign animation and releases it here in the States, like Ernest E. Celestine. So what they would do is, like, for instance, when they release a movie, they're always emailing me and they're saying, do you want to come and see it? Do you want to do an interview with anybody, any of the talent? So they're really in charge of, reaching out to the press, getting the coverage that's necessary, and also any ads that they want to run. So once you hand the movie over to a foreign distributor, they're in charge of distributing that movie in that country, and they get a cut of the gross for their efforts. However, what I wanted to mention was that a number of foreign distributors are maybe thinking of coming into the United States and distributing these films themselves. We just saw this with EuropaCorp, which is, of course, is Luc Besson's company, which distributed the transporter, refueled Transporter 4 itself. Now, it didn't do very well, unfortunately, for them, but still, they didn't have any middleman between them and the American moviegoer. They just came in here themselves. They handled all, they have one to blame, too, that's the downside, but they handled all the press for it, they handled all the screening, all the advertising, that was all up to them, and therefore they don't have to share the revenue with anybody. So I think that as you get more and more global film community stepping up their game, and Luc Besson is like a one-man powerhouse, basically, a one-man film industry over in Europe, you know, you might see other foreign distributors deciding to do the same thing. I'm not quite sure what, maybe Hollywood will have to add some rules through the United States government to try and protect their market a little bit better if that comes to be the case. But right now it does seem that you can have a U.S. arm of your distribution company, even if you're coming from abroad, and just release the films yourself. So you might be seeing more and more of that going forward as, you know, the foreign film industry becomes more robust and more competitive and more aggressive. So that's basically the way it works. If you get the local distributor to do it, they take a chunk of the change, and also they get to count that box office as part of their earnings for the year. You know, for all the records, you know, you go and you see, oh, how does GK Kids doing, and they get to claim all the U.S. box office for the films they released. Same with Lionsgate. If they release a film with, they do a lot with. Like I think Pantelion, the Spanish language distributor, they get to count that box office themselves toward the end of the year when everyone's saying how all the studios did. So that's also valuable as well. But so that's basically, and then of course there are specialty houses that specialize, obviously, in releasing foreign films, and that's kind of like their whole business model. But we'll see if they continue to exist if foreign distributors decide to do that themselves. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. I hope that illuminated that a little bit for you, Stryden. Thank you for a great question. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and that viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.